What's up, everybody? It is Monday night, and this is another episode of TFG Tonight. You see it. There we go. It's another episode of TFG Tonight. You guys can go ahead and applaud. Act like I can hear you. We got a good show tonight. We have some amazing guests. Some of you know, some of you don't know. I am Lamar Falk, your host, and we're talking about a lot. We're talking about COVID, like always. We're talking about defunding the police. I'm very curious on, is that a good idea or is that not a good idea? What does it entail, defunding the police? Is that the answer? We're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about the jobs numbers, unemployment rates. We're going to talk about Candace Owens. I know you guys love Candace Owens. We're going to talk about what she had to say. We're going to maybe talk about Trump, and we're going to introduce Val Demings to the world. Some of you may have heard that name, some of you might not, but she's in the running. She's on the short list to be Biden's vice president. But I think it's only right if you know who she is, what she stands for, so that you're equipped to make a good decision on how you feel about it. Let's bring our guest on. Let's get this conversation crack-a-lacking. Let's get it talking. Let's get it going. Hey, Candace, what's going on? What's up, Mr. Stewart? How are you? Mr. Haynes, how are you? Mr. Cornish, how are you?
I'm good.
Walter, how are you?
What's going on, fellas? How y'all doing tonight?
Doing swell.
Gentlemen.
Doing swell. I'm quite excited. We have a lot to get to, and I can't wait to hear y'all's opinions on these topics. And the first thing I want to tackle tonight is defunding police. Now, I've seen some interviews about this. I've heard them talking about it, and I'm a bit torn on it. I'm trying to figure out, and it's not that I don't want to support it. I want to support it if it's a good thing, but I want to know what particularly does defunding the police, how does that help our cause? Does that mean taking more police off the street? And if that's the case, what are we going to do when we call 911 and there's nobody that comes to help when somebody's robbing us or kicking our butts or what have you? What does defunding the police mean, and what's the purpose of that? Let's start with a new face we have over here. Mr. Harold, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. How about you, Lamar?
Pretty good. What are your thoughts on that whole thing?
Well, I'm like you. I just want to know what the definition of what they're talking about is defunding the police, first of all, because if we're talking about abolishing a police department, who's going to protect the little ladies that need the police? You know, then do we call it a National Guard then? Does the town become under martial law? You know, what is defunding? If it's instead of defunding, what I would say would be pretty reasonable is to start cleaning out the top of the police command. You start implementing some strong policies and legislation about protecting the whistleblowing police officers, because you need those whistleblowing police officers that are going to report what these bullying police officers, abusive police officers are doing. Because those bullying and abusive police officers, those guys got reputations on the police department. And they're feared and they're respected by the administration, supervisors, and their peers.
Yeah.
You know, that's I'm concerned with if we could implement some policies that protect these officers, that once they have reported or blown the whistle on some of these bad cops, then these reporting officers start having these problems. Mm-hmm. We start identifying the date when they reported them.
Yeah.
And then we work on saving their careers instead of having their careers being becoming disastrous, and they're unable to be employed as a police officer anywhere else.
Let me get to one of these comments here. We have comments coming in live here. Tam Watt says defunding the police is shorthand for a divest and invest model, divesting money from local and state police budgets and reinvesting into the communities, mental health services and social service programs. Ricky, what's your take on this whole defunding?
So,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Were you calling me, Lamar?
Yeah, Ricky, what are your thoughts on
I think that if we get a clear definition of what defunding is, I think that's a good idea. Uh, Also, there also can be implemented plans from the top, from our government system, to fund all those programs that we don't really have to necessarily take from the police department. We can really get those things funded through our government, which they're lacking a lot on. Uh, but what I would say is we need more training for police officers, longer training. I think that's important. I think a lot of people saw the meme that was going around that you have to have more training hours as a barber than to be a police officer, which is crazy.
Well,
So I'm
oh,
sorry.
okay. Let me ask you this here. So it's 1600 hours to be a barber, right? I know that is in the state of Texas. So let's say the Dallas Police Academy, I think it's
980.
8, 9 months. 8, 9 months. That's quite a bit. And here's the thing. Yeah, the training is good, but once you train them in the academy, that's the schoolhouse. Then you get them out on the street. Then you have a cop say, everything you learned in that academy, just forget about that. I'm gonna teach you how to do this on the streets.
And that's
You
why I think,
understand? That's the
we
problem.
should
Yeah.
have continuously training, especially like
And
diversity training. They need to have
absolutely.
so many training hours per year. It's 50 to 60 training hours per year on dealing with people with mental health issues, dealing with diversity issues.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. I
Roger
don't
that.
think I don't think that there's enough being done, because when you put certain officers in certain communities that don't know that community, the biases already start to creep in. But if you start
Roger
having
that.
these trainings every year, so many training hours a year that they have to go, it helps with refreshing. We I work at a job, my wife work at a job, and training is important. We get those training, it refreshes our mind. We get back into the mode of trying to do things correctly. I think that's
Right.
very important. I don't. You don't necessarily have to defund those programs, but I think bringing in more training, bringing in things to help them do things correctly, I think will be better. And also trying to assign police officers to their communities will
Right.
help a lot. If you assign a lot of black officers to those communities that they grew up in, I think that's important.
Okay. Yeah, that's good too. But we need them white folks there too. Here's the thing. Don't you? Because
Well, I'm not saying I'm
based
not
upon my
saying I'm not
career,
saying all black officers need to be in
I
those
know I
communities.
got you. I
Yeah,
got you.
Let's
I
grab,
got you. I just want to
let's
emphasize
get
that
Brendan
point.
Kennard in this real quick. Brendan Kennard, I think
Yeah.
y'all got anything you want to add to the whole defunding?
You can go ahead, Brendan, first.
Yeah, okay. So I will say this to Mr. Harold's point. You're right. Any company that trains you in house is just a front, right? Because it never works like that. That's why I laugh at companies who put people on salary. When you put somebody on salary, that's a volunteer slavery, right? You no longer married to your family. Shut it down. You no longer married to your family. You married to that job, right? Because 40 hours ain't 40 hours, and you really ain't flexing your time. They flexing their muscles on you, right? So that's the reality. So I do understand your point because that's any company, right? Because all they want to do is they want the bottom line, and when the auditors come in, they want to be able to show by paperwork that we got this done. That's it. So I agree with you when you make that statement. This is the problem. Humanity is the problem. That we value the dollar over the lives of people. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like I don't. It doesn't matter to me uh, how much money I am suggested to make because what you I mean y'all have what free overtime. Y'all get jobs outside of things. Man, if things are not right, so the system is broken because it's only a front. It's there to cover up. You blow the whistle, you're gonna lose your job.
Roger
So,
that.
so you know what I'm saying. That's the whole point. All this is a front that's being put up. And the problem is with us, man, is that we value that dollar over that integrity. And I think
Mm.
Right.
once we come to the place, man, where we no longer chasing that dollar and we become content in where we are, that's why I love the fact that I grew up with an 87-year-old grandfather because I learned that I don't have to have all the money in the world as long as I'm cool with what I got. And once I'm
Right.
cool with what I got, then I got 2 feet to stand on and not worried about this man gonna take my job from me or not. Because you know, I'll say this, and I'll let Kennard go. The thing about it, I stood up to a man that was in a position higher than me. And I told him, man, I don't want your job. I said, because I get to go home at night. You got to stay here and do your work. So I don't want your job. But it took me, but see, when our debt to income ratio is off balance, like the scales of justice, right? Then we have to do whatever they ask, right? Because why? Because at the end of the day, we got to pay for all these card notes we got. The house you really can't afford. So
Absolutely.
it has a whole issue that all that folds out into the fact that that's why we can't stand up, because we owe them too much.
Yeah.
Can
Go
I
ahead,
say
Right.
something
Uh,
real quick?
don't start
You know
early
that.
now. Don't start in early.
No. You. I'm just saying. I mean, I agree with what you're talking about. I
Okay,
think
good.
also what help. What help is outside investigation oversight over the police departments, not internal investigations. I think if you have a oversight committee that is in every state or every major city that they can do the investigations for those police departments and not coming from inside, I think that will also help. You get a chance to you will see people trying to do their jobs correctly because they have oversight not from
Okay.
just inside but over them.
But who's going to do those investigations?
That's exactly right.
Who, trained.
I
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm gonna say this here to you. Um, the civilian doesn't understand really what.
But that's in most every single profession. There's always
Absolutely
if you're a lawyer, there's a board.
right.
There's all kinds.
But
And
that
so if you can have a board that they have to follow, they have rules and they have to follow these rules. And
okay.
something happens, the board come in and they do an investigation. That's what I'm saying.
So
Not coming from
I'm gonna get to y'all.
yeah, that makes sense. I can see that. Hold on. I mean, I see your point, but the board would be too small to conduct the rules, but the board could collect funding or have access to funding where they could outsource it to another law enforcement agency to
That's
conduct
right.
an investigation. But
that's
that
right.
makes, I mean, that, okay.
You can do it 120 ways, but the
Yeah.
investigation itself is not. Internal investigations are really rarely, in my opinion, foolproof. I
Well,
always look
I
at
could,
that
I
as
agree. I agree with you on a lot of that too. Yeah.
it's a
Because,
conflict
that's
of
where the
interest.
corruption, starts, and that's really where it ends. But we
Right.
need to work from the top. You fire some of these chiefs. Let me say this here, and then I'm going to let these guys talk. Here's my point. The chief, when you talk to a chief of police, if ever you get a chief of police on this station, you ask them, say, hey, what about these whistleblowing policies protecting these police officers that are below the whistles? Do y'all consider their families, et cetera, et cetera? And then they say, Chief, you ask them the question, do you know of any on your police department that have blown the whistle and have been the subject of retaliation? If they tell you no, you've never witnessed this, and this chief's been there 30 or 40 years, we need another chief.
So,
Let's be real, man.
so let's just say, so you were a cop for how long?
I was a police officer for let me see, since 1983 to 1999.
So,
1980, I was in law enforcement from 1989 to actually no, I'm sorry, till 2009. 2009.
so about to go to you, Kennard. But I got a question. So, when you were a cop, was there some type of stigma? Would you have felt comfortable being a whistleblower during that time?
Well, as for me, it's no problem. You understand? But for the average police officer, it's just like anybody else within that profession. They want to be accepted by their peers. They want to be liked by their supervisors, et cetera, et cetera. I just didn't care. I did my job. What is right is right. What is wrong is wrong. And that's just the way. That's the way I feel here today. And I have been that way in the military. I've been that way in law enforcement also.
All right. Some of the comments, and then Kennard, I'm going to you. Gabrielle Don Che says training is so imperative. Shantae says when they say defund, they don't mean abolish. We see Desiree says, as a garage door technician, my job requires me to go through certain training every year. I have to improve with the time. Training is necessary. Tam Watt says, in Minneapolis, they pledged on Sunday to dismantle their police department, promising to create a new system of public safety. They promised to develop plans by working with the community and said they would draw on past studies, consent decrees, and reforms to policy to policing across the nation. All right, Kunal, what you got?
Well, what I can say, of course, I studied this stuff on the outside looking in as a criminal justice slash criminology major with a concentration in psychology at Auburn. A lot of the things that people are saying out in the social stratosphere is easier said than done. To be honest with you, because when you're talking about a uniformed officer that has to put his life on the line every shift that he goes out there, and I mean, even subconsciously, when you do a traffic stop, that could be the end of somebody's life. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's easy for us to say post facto that because of the things that have happened with the current events that, all of these things should happen from a police force standpoint, and all of these rules should happen. But at the same time, these police officers, I'm talking about the good ones. I'm talking about the ones who go into their respective, huddles at the beginning of the shift and have all intents to go out and perform the duties socially and service wise that they want to serve, that they plan to serve. They could go home and lose their life. These are good cops.
Yeah.
In every entity of workforce, society, whatever, there are always going to be some bad apples. There are always going to be some people that break the discretionary code that goes against what the discretionary code is, and they feel like maybe it is difficult to arrest an officer for doing some crazy stuff, and that particular officer decides that, because of that particular code, I can do this shit and get away with it. But I do not think, and with me being a former somewhat representative of public safety on several entities, I don't think that represents the vast majority as far as what the thought process is for a public safety officer or a representative of a state entity in that regard.
But let me ask you this question: are we really naive in thinking that the system that's in the system wasn't designed to corrupt the system? Are we really? Are y'all really
if you look at it like this, there's corruption in every entity of.
That's system. Right. That's right.
Every entity of system has a certain level of corruption. The company you work for, the company
every company that we all work for got corruption.
We all work for has a certain degree of corruption. So for us to think otherwise is all but naive.
Okay.
Right. But I think there's an issue when we talk about the level of corruption, that we're talking about people's lives. You can't come back from that. And when people die from people who are corrupt or want to abuse their power, that's an issue. It's not a small mistake. It's where it's
people been dying since the beginning of time. What
that don't mean nothing. Harold's ready to say something. What you got?
Okay, Let me say this, brothers. Let me say this, brother. I understand you did some studying at Auburn. I've done studying on investigations within the police department. I've seen the disparity in treatment. I did the research which brought the Department of Justice to the city of Dallas to investigate discrimination against Black police officers within the the Dallas Police Department. I was then the second vice president of the Texas Peace Officers Association. That was the Black Police Officers Association. Now that's what it's called. I have blown the whistle. I was terminated 3 times, demoted, suspended several times, placed on psychological evaluations. transferred numerous times. That's the point I'm trying to say. I live that, and a lot of people don't understand. And if you don't, look, I get what you're saying. It's a no fix. I mean, it's going to take a while to fix all of this. But if you all discount the ability of those whistleblowing officers, and you do not ensure their career, we're going to be revisiting this.
Yes, sir.
Same subject in about 10 or 15 years.
And Mr. Harold, you said something.
I think
hold on, Rick. Let me tell you something. Mr. Harold, you said something, and that's the problem with people. They don't have that cast iron stomach, man, because they got a lot more riding on their livelihood than the and that's the issue
working
for
part-time
me, man.
jobs, that's that stuff,
right? Because you don't want to lose your clout, or you don't want to lose your tenure. You know what I'm saying? And I got a problem with that. I respect you for putting your integrity in front of a job. You know what I'm saying? And that's where we got to get to, right? Because guess what? We're only doing that because our white counterparts, we learned that from them. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know I thought it was about loyalty, right?
No, you're absolutely right. When you said the white, let me say something to you all. Let me get real with you.
Get real.
These are things that they tell you when you're a young officer on the street. You're the MF police. You can do what the hell you want to do. Now here I am. I'm a black male, 21 years old. And I'm saying, and I got to play the game with him. Yeah, you're right. But I'm saying in my mind, man, you crazy as hell. First thing I do out here that's wrong, you're gonna hang my butt.
That's
you understand?
Exactly right.
Yep. So but we've got to always be thinking, and that's how it was.
I agree, Mr. Harold. I think that if whistleblowers are protected, and they can come without being afraid of having their identity exposed, it will take a lot of the corruption away, because you are asking someone to put their livelihood on the line, and that's tough. It's extremely tough. And so and to be blackballed in your own precinct that's also rough, and it happens all the time. So if you can,
and that's why so many of them stay quiet, because they don't want to get blackballed.
That's right. That's right.
Let me say this here. In the 60s, Ossie Davis, Stokely Carmichael, you brother Snick, those brothers, when Martin Luther King was when he was busy scheduling his speeches and parades and protesting. This is what Ossie Davis basically said. This man is too important to us in our community. We need to ensure this brother to make sure he can concentrate on getting the message out that our community needs to get out. He said, so he can't concentrate if he's worried about if he's going to be killed and how his family is going to be taken care of. So these guys, did you ever hear of Martin Luther King, any of his daughters or son having any financial difficulties? Somebody looked out for him, right?
Yes, sir. Somebody got him out of jail every time he went too.
That's right.